I'm here with Shaun Attwood, who has the most extraordinary story. So welcome to Mojo Life TV, Shaun.
Thank you very much, Andrew.
Now, Shaun, you do a lot of speaking in schools, promoting a particular message, but it's born of an authentic experience that you've had, and what an experience it is. But could you take us back a little bit to your time before you went to America, which the listeners will come across shortly, and just tell us what you used to do when you lived in the northwest of England?
Well, when I was 14, I got interested in the stock market, and my economics teacher really took me under his wing, had me reading the Financial Times, explaining to me how the share prices data worked. At 16, I borrowed 50 quid from my nan, doubled it in British Telecom shares. So I was hooked on the stock market at a very young age. I was telling all my mates back then, I'm going to go to America, make $1 million in the stock market and fly all you guys over.
But why did you want to go to America? Is that not something that you could have done in the UK?
I had aunts and uncles living in America, and I used to visit there as a teenager, and I was just completely dazzled. The size of the roads, the houses, the cars, the swimming pools in people's backyards. One aunt in particular, who was very kind to me, whenever she came into some money, she would fly me over, and she would take me to nightclubs. I was only a teenager.
So your auntie would take you to nightclubs?
Yeah, I was only a teenager. She'd introduce me to women as Paul McCartney's nephew. So you can imagine the kind of fun I had over there, and it just really dazzled me. And I thought, okay, this would be a good place to go after.
Does Paul McCartney have a nephew?
I never researched it.
So talk to us then about the time when you actually went over to America. How did that come about?
Well, I went on to sixth form and university. I did a business studies degree. Now, England was in a recession when I graduated. It was hard to get a job. And my aunt's telling me, come out here, it's booming, you get a job real easy with your English accent. And that's what I did. I just went there with a visitor's visa. Got offered a job right away, commission only as a stockbroker. Now, stockbroking sounds fancy, but basically it was glorified telesales. The boss slaps the phone book down on my desk day one and says, you need to call 500 numbers a day to find people to buy shares.
Work your way through that.
Yes.
Which state are we talking about?
Phoenix, Arizona.
Okay.
So my first couple of years I've got no money. The job's commission only. I'm basically living off cheese on toast and bananas, wondering if I'm ever going to make it. But 5 years in, working these long hours, pursuing my dream, I'm the top guy in the office, grossing over $500,000 a year, got my own staff, secretary, cold callers. I'm only in my 20s and I've got enough money to retire from stockbroking. I took that money, put it into technology shares. They all shoot up, and then I become a millionaire. But I start
at the age of?
This is in the late 1990s.
Okay.
So late 20s, up to 30.
Fine.
And the money goes right to my head, as it would if you're in your 20s.
And you felt on top of the world?
Felt on top of the world and felt like I could transfer the Manchester rave scene to Phoenix, Arizona, which I did, unfortunately, and I was misguided in doing this. I also had people bringing the ecstasy in and selling it. So it was my own daft fault what happened next.
And what did happen next?
May 16th, 2002, there's a knock on the door. Tempe Police Department, we have a warrant. Open the door. So I run to the bedroom to get my girlfriend. I said, come on, wake up, it's the cops. She jumps out of bed. We decide to let them in, maybe they'll go easier on us. Halfway to the door, boom. The door just jumps off its hinges.
You didn't even have a chance to get to the door and open it?
No, it just flies off its hinges. It's like a war is entering the living room. They come in the full battle regalia, military style, fanning out. So at that point, I thought I was going to get shot by accident, even.
It's like a scene in a movie, but it was actually real.
A scene in a war movie.
Yeah.
Yes, I was terrified. So then they start yelling, "Get on the ground now! Don't move!" And you fall down. They just crush you and handcuff you.
And do you know how it was that they found out, where you were and what you'd been doing?
They had 10 witness informants, and it was a wiretap case. They'd recorded thousands of phone calls, and they were tracking us through satellite devices on our vehicles.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And what happened next?
I'm charged with talking about drugs on the phone, and my bail is set at $750,000 cash only. All my money and assets are seized by the state of Arizona. I never get any of it back. So there's no way I'm bailing out. I end up in the jail that's got the highest rate of death in America, where not only gang members, but even guards are murdering the prisoners.
And what was the name of the jail, Shaun?
The Maricopa County Jail System in Phoenix, Arizona.
Okay. And just to go back slightly, did you say that all of the money that you'd made in the stock market was seized?
Yes.
And you weren't able to get that back?
Even my pension that was legally earned when I was a stockbroker.
Yeah.
But I broke the law, and if you break the law in Arizona, you open yourself up to them taking everything from you.
Right.
So I take full responsibility
Yes.
for losing my own money.
Yes.
Yeah.
So talk us through the process of entering the penal system.
Well, when you first go in, it's all completely gang controlled. Racial gangs in America. It's the whites, the blacks, the Mexicans, and the Mexican Americans. If you're white, the Aryan Brotherhood is the gang that comes up to you as soon as you walk in. First thing they do is ask you what your charges are. And you can't lie because it's on a little printout from the jail. Some charges are KOS by the gang, which means kill on sight. Once you've got past this initial interrogation, charges such as sex offences or crimes against women or children, once you got past that interrogation, then you have to go to the meeting and meet what's called the head of the race. He explains all the rules you must follow or else the whole gang will smash you. If someone calls you a punk or hits you, you must fight them on the spot. You must take showers or else they'll smash you for having bad hygiene. Can't go making friends with the guards or else they'll smash you for snitching. Can't go sit at the tables with the other races or else they'll smash you for that. Everything you take for granted about your safety is reversed. They're constantly looking for people to beat up because that's how they earn their reputations and their tattoos.
Sure.
So I had to get used to the sounds of heads getting bashed against toilets, bodies getting thrown around, people getting carried out on stretchers who looked like they were dead. It was more a case of me watching the violence though than me getting subjected to it, because over 100 people were arrested in dawn raids from the rave scene, including some of my bouncers, including a massive fellow who's one of the main characters in my book, who I grew up with in my hometown, called Wildman. So I had, some protection going in.
Sure.
And when I got split from those guys later on, because my blog, I was writing stories about the prisoners, and the stories were causing people to send them books and mail from all over the world, and those prisoners started protecting me as well.
Look, we'll come back to the blog in a moment, because that's a fascinating aspect of your story. But let's just go back for a moment to the actual incarceration. You entered the penal system and you were put initially on remand.
Yes.
So just talk us through that, about when you were charged and what happened before you were actually charged.
Okay, in America, jail and prison are two different things. Jail is where you're on remand, you're unsentenced, you're waiting to go to trial. Now, there's a presumption of innocence in the American legal system, whereby if you're not convicted of a crime, you're presumed innocent and you shouldn't be punished like those who are convicted of crimes. Yet the conditions in the remand jail are 10 times worse than the conditions in the prison. I do think prisoners should be punished, but there shouldn't be flagrant human rights violations going on like there were at this jail. Dead rats in the food, cockroaches crawling all over us at night times, guards murdering the prisoners. It was just off.
It sounds like Shawshank.
Well, News of the World said my book Hard Time makes the Shawshank look like a holiday camp.
Good heavens.
Yeah.
So conditions were clearly horrendous, horrific, and there was clearly an acceptance of those conditions by the people running the jail.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about this extraordinary character. Is he the warden of the jail?
Sheriff Joe Arpaio. He's re-elected every 4 years.
So he's not the jail warden, but he's
the boss of the entire jail system.
Okay.
Yeah, and one of his favourite quotes is, "It costs us more to feed our police dogs than our prisoners, and our police dogs are working for a living." So he's saying the prisoners aren't even worth the value of dogs.
Sure.
The meals, breakfast was mouldy bread and green bologna. Green bologna is a raw sausage meat that's gone past its sell-by date, and it's got a green shine to it.
Right.
The mould on the bread, blue, green. Sometimes our mould came in these fantastic colours that look like works of art. And we were so hungry, we would just scratch it off the bread and swill it because it was stale in water to get it down. The evening meal was a mystery meat slop the prisoners called Red Death. It looked like carroty vomit blended with blood. Had all kind of random pieces of meat in it, and it stunk. Sometimes there was dead rats in it. On one occasion, we complained. We gave a dead rat back to the guards, and they said they would investigate it. And they came back later in the day, and so that the jail wouldn't get any trouble. They said it was just a potato. There wasn't much we could do about it, really. Yeah.
But this gentleman, Joe Arpaio.
Arpaio, yes.
Arpaio. He's kind of adopted this celebrity status in the States, hasn't he? Tell us more about that.
He epitomises the slogan, tough on crime, you know, and that's how he's come to power, by embracing that. And he's out doing publicity stunts all the time. He's got 2 reality TV shows, Smile You're Under Arrest and Inmate Idol. In Smile You're Under Arrest, people with outstanding warrants get letters in the mail saying that they've won a prize and to come to this address. And then he pops up live on camera, and he's, you know, they're arresting them.
They film it all, and it's made into sensationalised TV.
Exactly. Inmate Idol, it's a talent contest.
Inmate Idol.
In the jail with a celebrity panel of judges, like Alice Cooper will be there from Kiss, because he lives in Phoenix. And he's been criticised late last year for 2 other publicity stunts that he did. He started a website where not only can you look at the mug shots of the prisoners, you get to vote on who's the ugliest. And he also went on this raid of this animal cruelty suspected house. He took armoured vehicles. Driving one of the armoured vehicles was Steven Seagal, the action movie star, who, crashing into the house, killed dozens of chickens and the family pet dog.
And this was to expose animal cruelty.
Yes.
Now, Shaun, you started writing about your experiences in jail, and you started a blog. So explain how that came about and how you managed to sort of communicate with the outside world.
Well, a guard said to me, the world has no idea what's really going on in here. So I wanted to change that. Now, my dad had just read a book by Salem Pax, who's the Baghdad blogger. That was someone who was living in Baghdad when the bombs started falling. And he started blogging about it, and it got in the news. So we figured, okay, well, maybe, you know, there's something there. So we had this idea to start a blog. Now, there's no computers or internet or anything like that in the jail. And we couldn't let the guards find out because the guards were murdering the prisoners as well. So what I did was, I started with what's called a golf pencil in America. It's like the kind of pencil you see in a betting shop in England.
Okay.
Sharpened on the door, I started writing everything down. Now, I couldn't put these things in the mail because the guards can open your mail. How am I going to get them out of maximum security? I recruited my aunt. She would visit me on the weekends.
Is this the same aunt that used to take you to nightclubs?
No, it's a sister. Yeah.
Right.
Now, in maximum security, the visits are through plexiglass windows. Like if you've seen the movie Silence of the Lambs, it's like when Clarice Starling first meets Hannibal Lecter.
Okay.
So I couldn't pass anything to her either. What I did was I hid what I wrote in legal paperwork and letters I took to the visitation guard to release to my aunt. Now, I know the guard's going to search through this, and the first time I did it, my heart's going like crazy, thinking...
And what would have been the consequences if you'd have been...
Well, the guards were routinely murdering prisoners in this place, and it wasn't the big bad gang members, it was mostly mentally ill people or anyone who put up any kind of resistance. Tens of millions has been paid out to family members of victims of the guards. Guards found responsible in federal court for murdering prisoners have been promoted and given pay rises by the boss of the jail, the sheriff. So it's extremely dangerous environment. Anything can happen to people in there if the guards want it to.
So you managed to get your blog out via this subterfuge through, through your aunt.
Yes.
And what was the impact of that when people started reading it? How did it connect with people?
It went in the Guardian first, and then it went on the BBC, and it just snowballed.
And you called it, was it John's
Jail Journal,
yes.
JON, to keep it anonymous in the beginning. And all these people from all over the world started to send letters and comments of support. I'd almost lost my faith in humanity after going through this jail, which was like a designer torture house.
What was the low point that you reached?
Well, a year in, I was told in the beginning I was looking at a 5-year sentence and it would take a year for my case to resolve. A year in, I'm told I'm facing decades. It's going to take another year to resolve the case. My bail's doubled, so I moved from a medium security remand jail to a maximum which is mostly murderers and really hardcore prisoners. But this is where it was absolutely full of cockroaches as well. I've got bleeding and itching skin infections and bed sores. I've got a pink eye infection. My eyelids drooping down. There's pus coming out. They've stopped my girlfriend from visiting me because they knew she was my lifeline by charging her with one prescription pill found on the day of the raid without a prescription. Co-defendants can't visit co-defendants. I felt the full weight of the legal system crushing me. And I think to myself, do I want to spend the rest of my life in these environments? So I'd fantasize about just slashing my wrists and bleeding out on the cell and ending it. It was like an option I had control of. I'd think then about my family and girlfriend. And I had photographs of my girlfriend and my parents and my sister. And I'd look at those pictures and it would give me the strength not to do it. And I'd think my mum was going to get a phone call saying her son's dead in an Arizona jail cell. He slashed his wrists. I couldn't bear the thought of putting my mum through that either.
Do to her, basically.
Yeah. My mum had already had a nervous breakdown after I was arrested. She's been through enough.
Now, in your story, you actually wrote a book called Hard Time.
Yeah.
And that was written presumably after you'd come out.
Yeah.
But while you're inside, you really got into literature. Yes.
Prior to the SWAT team, I had no interest at all in reading fiction. I laughed and mocked my sister. I said fiction was a frivolous pastime. My sister's got a degree in classical literature, speaks 5 languages, she's a journalist, always wanted to be an author. And all of a sudden, we're reversing roles. Suddenly I'm the writer, and I was told that reading would improve my writing. So thanks to the kindness of all these blog readers, as well as some of the books that were in the prison library, I went through this fantastic journey through literature. Blog readers started sending me books, started sending the prisoners I was writing about books. I was only allowed 7 in my cell at a time. And this one month, this kindly property officer, and there weren't many of those, came with a wheelbarrow of books. There was 50-something in it, and said he was just going to look the other way. And it was like Christmas in my cell. Yeah. All the prisoners mobbed in. They were selecting which ones they were going to read, and they would run off excited back to their cells with them. And all the books ended up, filling this prison library. So I felt as I was reading, I could feel my old belief systems being stripped away. I didn't realise how much you could learn from fiction. Not only was I reading fiction, I was reading non-fiction. I tried to read all of the originals in philosophy and psychology. And in fiction, I went through the classics of like Russian literature, right up to some of my modern day favourites like Tom Wolfe, Don DeLillo, John Updike. And these books had a really big influence on me. I remember early on my parents sent me a Stephen King book. And one of the characters I was writing about on my blog at the time was an Italian mafia mass murderer called Two Tonys, who left dead bodies from Tucson to Alaska. But he claimed they all had it coming because they were rival gangsters, so he never saw anything wrong with that. He said, what are you reading Stephen King for? Stephen King's churning out books like McDonald's is churning out freaking hamburgers. You need to read some John Updike or some Tom Wolfe or some Norman Mailer.
He wasn't the kind of guy you said no to then when he made that suggestion.
He wasn't the kind of guy you refused. But he turned me on to some classy contemporary fiction. Got me away from that stuff that's designed for the masses.
Now, one thing that I haven't quite understood yet is how did people from the outside world connect with you and what you were writing about? How did they get things back to you that you were aware of? How were they engaging with your material? Okay,
after I come out of the remand jail, we felt safe enough to release my name to the media, because in the prison units were named after guards that had been murdered by the prisoners. It wasn't the other way around, like in the jail, the guards were murdering the prisoners. So we felt it was a level safer, and so people knew who my name was then. They could write to me directly, and they could send me books, not directly, but if you're a prisoner, you can get a book sent to you through Amazon, so nothing's, no contraband, no heroin's stuck inside it.
Yes. So, explain how the release occurred? You know, when you came to the end of your sentence, what happened then?
Okay, it plays tricks on your mind as you get closer towards release. It's called gate fever. In prison, you adopt this mindset where you're just focused on the day. You want to get through the day. You know, you don't want to get hurt. You've made alliances with the right people, hopefully, and you know, it's like a video game. You're surrounded by ever-present danger.
Yes.
And using everything at your disposal to get through every day.
So just one day at a time.
Yeah. As you get towards the gate, you start thinking, okay, reality's coming back. How am I going to get a job? How am I going to support myself? Where am I going to live? All these things start creating this waves of anxiety that hit you at a time that rise in number and strength as you get closer towards the gate.
And this was over 5 years you were inside.
I served 5 3/4 years exactly.
And that was in prison, not the remand period.
26 months was in the remand.
Yeah.
The balance was in the prison.
Yeah.
And then when I got out, have you seen the movie Con Air with Nicolas Cage?
I have.
I was on Con Air for 2 days, going across Arizona and California. That's prisoners all shackled together and federal marshals watching them on these planes. You know, you can't even go up, get up and use the toilet or anything. And then we get to Los Angeles airport and they say, we're going to put you on first and take your chains off so you don't scare the passengers. You know, now I'm really excited. I'm a free man. But I was a bit institutionalized. All the people get on. I could smell the women's perfume. One of the first things I did was I put my hand up and asked a female member of the cabin crew permission for me to use the toilet. I was so used to being told what I couldn't do.
Yes.
She just laughed at me. She said, you don't need to ask. You know, the toilet's right over there. And I got all embarrassed. I went red in front of these people. I get to London. My mum's there. My sister, they're crying. My dad's there. You know, we're all hugging. One of the first things they did was took me to an Indian food restaurant so I could pig out.
Yes.
But my stomach had shrunk. To this day, I don't eat the same amount of food I was eating prior to my arrest. I realised you don't need it. It just sends you to the toilet too many times. My mum then said I was following her around like a puppy dog, waiting for orders in the house. I did a BBC interview the day I was released. A Harley Street drug counsellor heard it, and he offered me a job right away, going into schools, telling them my story. I was glad, you know, and I accepted it, but I told him, I need to readjust to society. Give me some time. It was a year before I felt I had the mental strength to try it. And I was still extremely nervous. I think it was year 10 at Bishop Stortford College. So nervous I couldn't even eat my breakfast. I went in there and paced like a prisoner in a cell at the front of the room, soaked in sweat.
So this was your first appearance
my
in
first
front of the kids in the school, yes.
Yeah. Couldn't even look at the audience. I was more scared of this year 10 than I was these murderers and gangsters I'd just been living with.
Yes.
I get out and I call my mum and dad. I said, I don't think I'm cut out for public speaking. They must have thought I was a madman, paced like a maniac. So I'm going into a bit of a depression then, you know. This is my big chance at getting a job. I've got a criminal record for ecstasy dealing.
Yes.
How on earth am I going to get employed? I'm not. So 2 weeks later, I got an email from the school, and they said, we get a professional public speaker in every week. Our kids have voted you the best talk of the year, and would you like to come back?
Now, you told me before this interview about the reaction that you have from kids and the difference that your story has made to them compared to other people who tell them not to do certain things.
Yeah. I get emails almost every day from the students saying that we don't listen to our teachers when it comes to drugs talks. We don't listen to our parents, you know. When there's a drugs talk, we roll our eyes and we go in the hall ready to play on our phones and fall asleep. But your story, because it was true, we can relate to it, and it's made us see what drugs can lead to.
Yes.
One girl said, after hearing my story and the conditions, she was going to go now and not do the degree she'd planned to do, but she was going to change it to do law, and she was going to go on to fight for human rights for prisoners. They say you're paying your debt back to society as your prison sentence, but to me, it's all this feedback from the kids and the influence it's having on them.
Yes.
That seems like a much better way.
Yes.
For someone to... Right, here's 2 emails that were sent to me by school children who saw my talk, and this is from a young lady at St. John the Baptist in Woking. You came into my school this week to talk about your life. Firstly, your talk was amazing. It was the highlight of almost everyone's day. Secondly, I've recently started taking some of the less hardcore drugs as a follow-on from smoking. I didn't really see how a few highs here and there could cause a problem, but your story really spoke to me. Thanks for taking the time to come to my school. Now this one is from a young lad at Westcliff High School for Boys. I'd just like to say that your story really got to me and many other people, unlike any speech or advice we've ever had. It was enjoyable, but also a very important lesson for all young people. I think it's great that you are trying to teach people not to make the same mistakes. You are an inspiration. I'd like to thank you for spending your valuable time speaking to us, because it was certainly a reality check for many people. Yours is a story I will never forget. Thanks again.
So, Shaun, where can people find out more about what you're doing and the cause that you're on?
If you want to read more about the prisoner stories who are sending me the stories through the letters, I still continue to post them at my blog, which is johnsjailjournal@blogspot.com. And that's John without the H, Jons.
And we'll include that at the end of this clip. So, Shaun Attwood, thank you so much for sharing your story. It is extraordinary, inspirational, and we would love to share it with as many people as we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to share it through you guys.